We need radical interventions. If we keep an ANC president in perpetuity, if you keep the same frame, you're going to deal with the same issue. The danger of MK is that it will move from a personality to a pseudo-liberation movement, and then the argument will be too hard to stop when that train moves. For every debate that we have, I guess we should ask ourselves the question, what is this debate sometimes designed to distract us from?
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, and today I am joined by SMWX royalty. Everyone comes on this platform now that we've blown up, thanks to you. But one of the politicians who came on SMWX before all the attention was trained on this channel is none other than Mmusi Maimane. And today we bring him back on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Sizwe, any day, any time. I'm a big fan. I've always enjoyed that you managed to pierce through the veil. And so I want to congratulate the platform. I say it honestly. I think that it's not blowing up because it wasn't meant to be. It was just a matter of time. And I think in many ways, this is just a foundation. I mean, you guys are global players, and I think hopefully one day, you can get anyone internationally, the US president, whoever you want.
Wow.
Hopefully one day they'll come sit here because I think you're that good. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. That's the plan. That's the plan. And I must tell you, the first time we interviewed you, that was a big moment for our team because we were trying to get different people and they wouldn't come. And once you came on the channel, we celebrated in the car like we had just scored the World Cup final goal.
So you mean your standards have improved since?
No, you see now. So one question before we get into the serious stuff: are you joining MK?
I came on this platform specifically to make that announcement. that I've heard a lot of people come here. They say, sadly, I'm not.
No, fair.
Yeah.
I'm just
Right.
thought we'd get that out the way.
Right.
Also, on this podcast, we have spoken about Liverpool's fortunes because we're both big Liverpool fans. And I mean, I don't know what people, top of the league, top of the Champions League, life is good.
We've been through it. I mean, the last time I was here, we were like, Champions League, we were there, and then it didn't end well. It's great to be a Liverpool supporter because all the emotions go with it. But for Christmas, if people are looking for us, they'll find us top of the table.
Absolutely.
I think that's a fair place to be. And so I'm actually I find now the Liverpool game I'm enjoying. I always wanted it to be a little bit boring. As much as I loved Jurgen Klopp, I used to think every game was like champagne, Whereas now I quite enjoy the boring. Let's win 1-0, let's win 2-1, let's control the games. And let's get on with our business without making too much noise. So it's good to be a Liverpool supporter.
Yeah, no, things are looking good.
We're there. And we beat Madrid. We're beating people now. Seriously. I'm waiting for the it's coming.
No, the Madrid one felt good.
It was a special one.
We last spoke just before the election. And I wonder, with the benefit of hindsight, how you digest what happened in the election for our country. Because I feel like we haven't fully appreciated what a massive moment it will be in South African history when we look back at 2024.
Certainly. I think we were, let me start there. We were not happy with our own results, and that in the context of what we were trying to achieve, we felt we could have done better, and we'll certainly be working towards that, and we've learned our own lessons. So, but I certainly think that if 2024 is about a lot of things, but one of the big things that it's about is the proper fragmentation of the ANC. Because when you look at another different analysis and say to yourself, let's add EFF-MK onto the list, then the ANC still enjoys a 60% majority in that regard.
True.
So you pull that 20% that is expressed in those two parties, you realize that it's one of the most significant fragmentations in that regard. And it's quite coincidental that the leader of MK still claims that he's an ANC member in good standing.
Yeah.
You know, so you find that one dynamic, and it's not unique to what's going on with SWAPO in Namibia. It's not unique to what's happening with many liberation movements, that they find force within themselves as the first. I think it has produced a very significant existential question, which is, what does it mean for a declining fortunes of the ANC and the process of democracy in South Africa? Because what you don't want to do is say, even post the ANC, you're going to replace the ANC with a different version of the ANC.
Absolutely.
So that's the first start. And I think some of what the current formation of the GNU has done is that it's given lifeline to that, but it hasn't quite given us the alternative that I think we need to build towards, because programmatically things have remained the same. So for me, I think it is significant. I think, unlike an election or like the life cycle of a country, this is but the beginning chapter. We've still got a long way to go to fulfill the transition.
Yeah.
It has begun the transition, but I don't think it's fulfilled it. Because whilst 2024 is significant, but I still think the movie is far from complete. There's a lot more that's still coming.
Agreed. It's interesting because the electorate changed a lot, but actually not a lot changed in terms of who governs and who holds power. So when we look, or another way of putting it is, I'm quite surprised by how much power the ANC has been able to retain, given how far they fell.
Correct. And that's part of the dilemma, is that it tells you how hegemonic the ANC's thinking is, in that it became a space where it could really capture many of the parties that could come through into the organization and keep the policy frame nearly the same. Because from where I sit right now, there hasn't been a contestation of policy. Instead, the converse has happened. I'm seeing people now start to sing praises about some of the policy frames that the ANC has put forward, which tells me that perhaps our contestation in the elections wasn't always about ideas. And I'm hoping that the next election will produce that argument further. Because when I even see how people have just swum along, people say, yeah, there are debates about the Bella Bill, NHI, etc. But even that fight has not been vociferous enough to indicate significant divisions in that, because it is hegemonic in view. And I would argue there are a lot more other policy issues that we need to really get in the room about and fight hard about. And my big surprise is that as I sit in appropriations, I look at the budget and I hear the inputs of parties, and I'm aware of the fact that they may tinker on the margins, but there isn't significant way of thinking that says this budget reflects the ANC's priority. What is our priorities, and how can we then have a proper contestation? If you said to me, where should there be divergent issues in the GNU? I say, let's look at the budget, because that gives you a sense as to what people are going to do. But when I reflect on the 2.1 trillion rand plus or minus, it's still more of the same. And in fact, I hear all the parties get up, applaud, take a similar view, and the issues have remained. So in essence, all I'm saying is that when you talk about the power, it has been given expression in the budget, and I'm not seeing any sense of contradiction or conflict in that bill.
I even saw some people defending Phala Phala and things. I was like, wow, okay.
And I really do think part of it is that if we're going to undo the hegemonic view of the last 30 years, South Africa has to think hard. And it's part of the work that I myself am trying to invest into thinking a lot about. How can we be more ambitious? If I said South Africa's ambition can't just be 1% GDP growth, but if we were to go for 5%, what if we thought to ourselves, how do we build a much more resilient middle class? Your priority spend may be different, How do we, if I said I want to build a society that's far more educated, and in what sections? How would we look at that? And how would we fund for that? That would be part of the fight. I think at the moment there's just getting along type phenomena without any genuine fights and no real ambition. So my big worry for South Africa is that we may have solved for the politics, but we kind of have remained in the same modus operandi, which I'm not sure will deliver the sort of prosperity we need.
Yeah, that's so true. I share those sentiments. I worry that after the sugar high of this GNU, we're going to have these problems that don't go away, and then people are going to start to ask, well, where's the delivery? When we invested so much hope in this government.
Yeah.
Hope can be a dangerous thing in politics if you don't follow through on it.
Certainly. And I think, there are two spaces that South Africans find themselves on, and other South Africans straddle between those two things. Others loosely define it as first and third world. I think we live in a dual economy, right? If you are living in a world where you have a car, you have a house, you have medical aid, which represents maybe the top 10% of South Africa in that sense, I think you'd look at this moment and go, I'm starting to feel some things have helped. Interest rates are starting to come down. And all of those things you would hope will translate into sentiment, etc., and should carry us through to some extent.
Yeah.
But it depends entirely on which aspect of South Africa you live in. When you live in a South Africa, let's take Soweto. It's a good example of Soweto is still experiencing load reduction in certain communities. So for them, electricity isn't this 200 days or 200 days plus without load shedding. People are still living with load reduction. People are now sitting with water infrastructural issues. Unemployment levels are still high. For every 1 rand we appropriate, 22 cents of it is going to debt, 38 to cost of employees. Households, 23% of households cite the fact that their main source of income is a sort of grant. We're living in a country that's suffering from multi-dimensional poverty. We are not healthy if you were to look at us and say, let's take an economic dipstick. So in essence, you'd say, we need radical interventions.
Yeah.
And those interventions can't just be relegated to populists. They really have to come down to the nuts and bolts of good governance. How do we educate our citizens? How do we become more ambitious as a country about building an infrastructure? Let's do that. But at this point in time, we're not. So my worry is, if government doesn't affect you that much on social services, etc., then maybe you might think things are okay.
So true.
But if your life is impacted significantly by government, whether you are grant recipients, healthcare dependent, education dependent, safety, you don't have private security, you are literally dependent on the police arriving. I think for those citizens, this South Africa isn't quite where they're at. And I think my worry is going forward, we're going to have to give some tough answers to that constituency.
On a personal level, what was it like going back to Parliament?
Yeah, there were some aspects of it that were difficult because I had to go back to an institution that when I went back into it, I had meeting some people who I thought I wouldn't have to work with again.
Yeah,
So
that's
sometimes hard. But, I've also come back a little bit more. Once you've taken a break, it also gives you time to think about what you want to do. So I came back a little bit more missional in the sense that I came back deliberate about what I wanted to do. And I'm enjoying my new role. I'm enjoying chairing the appropriations more than I thought I would, actually.
Interesting.
Because my background is in economics and not in finance. And so having to deal with the actual tools that deliver economic vision, which is in your appropriations and all of that, I've enjoyed that. And I love learning. So coming back has been an interesting space to be in. And I've certainly enjoyed the fight.
Yeah.
And I feel I'm in the best place I could be to really, if South Africa Inc. were a vehicle, I feel like I've gotten stuck into the engine of it to try and figure out, oh, okay, so this is what does that, this is what does this. And I wouldn't have said in the previous time I was in Parliament that was a primary focus, whereas it is now. So I'm having a good time, having fun.
You chair the Appropriations Committee. What does that committee do and why is it important?
I always like to tell people it's the most important committee in Parliament. For the simple reason that if you were to look at the 6th administration numbers, I'm just not saying that, more than half the bills that Parliament will pass are passed by the Appropriations Committee. So that's the, firstly, it does a lot of workload. The second thing is that the committee gives oversight to the budget.
Sure.
So, and it's empowered by the Money Bills and Related Matters Act, which actually says the executive makes proposals on the budget. Parliament is the one that votes in what the budget does. So often we always like to think the ministers tabled the budget. No, the ministers tabled a proposal. It's like Lobola negotiations. The uncles must then have a look at it and say, is it right? Does it work?
So you're the chair of the uncles.
I'm the uncle.
You're the uncle of the uncles.
You know what I mean? I'm the uncle that sits down and says, South Africans are not represented in the executive. They are represented in Parliament. They get to come to Parliament and be able to go, we actually want more money to be spent on education. We want more money. Today, I spent the day listening to public submissions where citizens are saying, actually, we're not sure that you are giving enough money to housing. We're not sure you are giving enough money to youth employment. We get to hear that. We make submissions. And the long-term destination is that when the bill was written, it was written with saying, if anyone else in Parliament, if any other portfolio committee is looking for money, the only way they can do it from a parliamentary and a people's point of view is through our committee. So we not only get the opportunity to give oversight to the performance of the budget and whether it's been spent well, we are the only committee capacitated to be able to hear input from other committees, make recommendations, and force the executive to hear that voice. And so I enjoy that, and we're wanting to see whether we can give fulfillment to what the bill was designed to do. Because I want to leave Parliament knowing that not only have I saved South Africans money, I've been able to ask whether every rand has been spent to the way it was meant to be spent for the programs it was designed to do. But thirdly, to say, hey, if the people's priorities are X, Y, and Z, can I wake up in 5 years' time and say, we gave fulfillment and at least expression to that?
Fam, I just wanted to interrupt this episode to let you know the 4 ways you can help SMWX. Way number 1, you can invite me to speak at your institution or company. Way number 2, you can advertise on this channel. Way number 3, you can become a member of this channel. The link to the membership is down below. And number 4, you can buy merch, that's books or hoodies. Now let's get back to the episode. All our contact details are in the description box below.
And having been there for a while, obviously not that long, but I know that you've thought about these questions as well. What do you think we're getting wrong about the budget in South Africa?
I think our budget is a legacy tool that we've sought to, if you like, without, just to keep afloat, right? We've kept a type of what is called, others call it austerity, others call it fiscal consolidation. We've kind of gone through a number of years of that, realizing that South Africa finds itself in a space where in low growth, high corruption, disruptions around COVID, ours is to keep a balance. Now, if you keep doing that over a period of time, the other correlation behind it is that you are actually declining in real terms because your growth isn't keeping up with your inflation. You are incurring debt year on year. And so it's not the fault of the finance minister. It's the broader governance challenge in that this is what South Africa is at. And we just keep year on year just doing a little bit more of adjustments here and there, but nothing substantive. So if you were to say to me what we get wrong, I think it's not so much what we get right or wrong. It's so much as just doing doing what we are doing. What we are doing now is achieving what we've always achieved, which is 1% GDP growth.
Yeah.
What we need is to say, let's make some bold decisions. And let's look at countries that have had to say, find themselves in situations like we were in. I'll take some of the Nordic countries for argument's sake. If you find yourself in a high debt space, limited fiscal wiggle room to do things, you have to make some tough decisions. For them, they started to think hard about what do they do with state-owned enterprises, what do they do about investment in infrastructure, and almost deliberately, disproportionately, but also take the painful pulls of saying, hey, we can't support these programs. We can't deploy troops to the DRC as an argument, or we can't bloat the cabinet, adding an additional burden of 600 million rands. We can't do any of that stuff, guys. Now we are making decisions that say we are here now, and our priorities are that. That's what we're going to do. I don't feel we're doing that. I feel like we're just keeping on for keeping on's sake, and we've added a few more expenditure, but really nothing to that if you are saying, I either like South Africa or don't like South Africa, this is why. So countries that have done that, when you think about a country like, you took out some of the Asian tigers, some of the work that's been done in education has been radical because they had to take the tough decisions to say, over a long period of time, this is what's going to happen. When you look at China, we talk about China today, but none of us can forget some of the tough policies they did. They let go of floating currencies. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying they let go of that thesis and said, we're going to allow our currency to devalue so that we can establish ourselves as a manufacturing hub for export purposes. What is that South African story? That's because eventually you'll get to the budget. I'm making the strong case to say there are multiple agencies we don't need. Shut those out. Let's create a wealth fund by scrapping all of these multiple funds that exist, whether it's this development fund, that bank, this. Let's bring them all in one place. Let's target key sectors. Imagine if we say to ourselves, we're going to borrow to fix our entire rail infrastructure so that goods can move around the country easier. Or we're going to madly build a bullet train between Northwest Mpumalanga and Limpopo because we think in those transport nodes, we can not only attract tourism, but we can build massive infrastructure. Then suddenly, when you are talking to an investor, they can go, okay, yeah, my pension fund is going to go into that, or my investment is going to go into that, because South Africa 10 or 15 years from now is going to begin to look either like Dubai or Singapore, or we're going to be this infrastructure hub. And then we say to ourselves, to South Africans, listen, we're not going to be able to finance that, or we're not going to be able to do this. So you're going to have to put up with us while we're fixing for that, but come along with the journey because we're convinced there'll be jobs that comes through that, there'll be that. Then we're moving.
Absolutely.
But at this point in time, we are merely, I don't know, we're just tinkering on the margins and hoping and hope. We've adopted hope as a strategy without putting in the real hard work goes into it.
I wonder what it is about us as a country sometimes where everything around us will change and then we will just decide, no, let's keep it all the same. It's like this election came and shook everything. And what did we do? We said, well, keep all the policies roughly the same, keep the government roughly the same, or the highest levels of the government roughly the same. And no matter whether it's left or right, at this point, I don't even care anymore. I just want to see someone do something different for
Correct. And that is the same longing I have. But as much as I support President Ramaphosa, I think, but I think if we keep an ANC president in perpetuity, leadership in a context of weakened institutions, leadership matters. It is the dividend. And if you keep the same frame, you're going to deal with the same issues. Whether you like those issues or not, that's just the reality. So my sense is, I'm envious of Botswana. They've just elected Duma Boko. It's come on board. He'll try new things. Hakainde Hichilema in Zambia, if it wasn't for the drought, I think that economy would be doing something significantly different now. and these are small countries, so we can't really compare ourselves to those, but I'm envious of days where we can introduce new leadership post this period, I would think, that then can say, I'm not beholden to an ANC consensus model. But I want to radically focus our priorities on this. And the electorate will have 5 years to judge whether that thing works or doesn't work. But that's what I think that's when we'll start to see some of the more profound changes.
We've seen a lot of change on the opposition side with the EFF and MK, which has surprised me to the extent that people have been moving, leaving the EFF, going to MK. But when we last spoke, you also said that in the longer term, one of the things you were working towards already before the election was rethinking what opposition politics looks like and possibly even consolidating different forms of opposition forces. Is that something you're still thinking about and pursuing? And how do you see the remaking of the political landscape going into the next election in 2029? Obviously, there's a local one too.
Sure. And I think actually the local one is going to be a good thesis to test this. For the reason that in a local government election, you can pre-coalesce before you post-coalesce, if I could use that term. Because you could arrive in a ward in Soweto and say, the best candidate is from this party. All of us pull forces to let this candidate potentially win. Because in a local government election, in a first past the post ward election, it isn't helpful for you to have RISE, Action SA, ACDP, this party, that party, all standing on the list. Because even if they each got 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 votes, if another party from anywhere else came up with 60, it wins. Whereas if you could have added those 10, 20, 30, they could beat that first one. So you can do the pre-coalition work as a start. Secondly, I think it's a good pilot to say, how are we working together in Parliament? How are we working together in other formations in preparations for 2029? I also do think South Africans are desperate for the center to hold. All over the world, we're seeing extremists begin to, and I don't want to import the European thesis or the American thesis about extreme left or extreme right. And populists that are rising. I think most people sit in the center. I think most people actually want an honest government. They want a level of multiracialism, multi-faith. They want that. I think most people want to wake up, do a decent day's work, be safe, get their kids educated. So if we could distill policy to somewhere in the center and coalesce parties around that agree on that, it would be the most important thing for South Africa. Because if we are not careful, the extreme arguments are going to rise. And they're not always in MK and EFF. I hear some people, adopt a very Trumpian approach in certain things, on immigration, as an example. We talk about the township economy, and now we're busy trying to register spaza shops, but I hear the underlying undertone behind it is that let's deal with these immigrants once and for all. Now, the township economy isn't just spaza shops. You've got undertakers, you've got catering, you've got backyard dwellers, you've got a whole lot of industry. You've got businesses where people are renting out their houses. That's a legitimate business. If wealthy people do it. I'm always amazed when I hear people stand up and say, let's deal with the immigrants. I say, go to Clifton, start there. Because the properties there aren't always owned by South Africans, if that's your argument. So I think we need a sensible conversation on immigration. One of the things I've been thinking at length about is to say, let's establish a multidisciplinary, multi-government panel that is SADC orientated, that can deal with this issue, so that we depoliticize it at one level, but we resource it appropriately across multiple countries. Because I also hear the argument that says Section 27 of our Constitution, whilst guarantees rights to all people, countries that are deriving benefits from health or education must also pay their bit, because citizens come across here and do that, must pay their bit. So there is a better conversation to be had, but that centrist view that's pragmatic, must be able to coalesce and say, how do we deal with this issue? And as the ANC and anyone else forgoes that, we need to be able to hold that. So I'm inviting parties in that space to do that work. I think we'll have a better program. I think we'll have better policy formulation. And I think ultimately we'll give South Africans a landing space when they all sit back and they go, am I here or am I there? I actually need to sit somewhere in the middle. So when I say change has begun, I don't think change is complete.
Yeah.
In the electoral frame.
Yeah. What do you make of MK and its emergence? Because it's been a surprise for many. It's maybe the political story of 2024. But other people are quite fearful of what MK either is or could become. What do you make of it?
I think MK is an extension of the ANC in that you can't dismiss the person of President Zuma. It would be like trying to understand Brazilian politics without understanding the person of Lula. You know, President Zuma is MK and MK is President Zuma in some sense. So that's the first thing. The second thing is President Zuma's fundamental constituency is KZN based. That's in some ways, if you look at him as a person, there was a historical position where he wanted to say, ANC Amazulu, if you like, that kind of space. Now, I'm not denying that as it grows, it's not always going to be narrowly ethnic in that sense. I think what the job that MK will probably have to battle with is how do you moralize their case? And one of the things that, to quote President Zuma, says he wants to unite the black parties. I think in a democracy that's a very dangerous place to be, because there's been a historical debate about what does black mean? What does the liberation of black people mean? And I worry that there are certain actors who sit within that party that might want to bastardize the term black liberation for, in certain instances, some, mission that, as they said back in the past, were given levers of power, became very dangerous around. I think MK, like many populist organizations all over the world, have got important questions that should not be left. Inequality is a fundamental issue. The exclusion of the majority in this country is still a fundamental question. So if no one is willing to answer the question, and MK speak about the question loudly, because I'm not convinced of their solutions. I haven't seen any, if I'm fair to them. I haven't seen what policy frame, how they anticipate, other than beating the drum about land. You've got to give me tangible, here's what we would do to liberate the masses that you claim. I worry that they would become pseudo-liberators merely by emphasizing the question and giving fairly simplistic answers to very complicated issues. And I accept the fact that everyone else likes to complicate the solutions to very simple questions. So you find this diametrical problem in South Africa. But I would urge that the danger of MK is that it will move from a personality to a pseudo-liberation movement, and then the argument will be too hard to stop when that train moves. But I still don't deny that I think in many ways it's an extension of the ANC, and I think it's a bunch of ANC people who are nostalgic about a particular type of version of the ANC. And so their growth and their infrastructure is really ANC infrastructure, because branches, councillors, all of those people have moved there. There may be a few others who may come and join them, but I think then you must concede that it's a type of ANC on the table. What will happen of it is the danger I've kind of alluded to. But I think what will happen of it is the same thing that what will happen of the ANC without Ramaphosa, what will happen to MK without Zuma. Those two questions hold for me.
Yeah.
And I think we need a new generation. To be honest with you, I'm tired of talking about Mathaima, honestly. And I'm not being ageist, but I'm a bit tired of it. I'm a bit tired of debating Polokwane. I'm a bit tired of, it's tiring, man. Like today other people are talking about AI. We are still discussing And I'm not
And it's the same
minimizing.
people. It's like literally the exact
it's
same
the
people.
same actors. The drama is just different. I think we need to really get ourselves to say, guys, I think it's Chomsky who argues the case that what governments would prefer you to do is to have debates in a narrow space, and within that narrow space be vociferous about it. And I think we have been invited to have a narrow debate. South Africa has got fundamentally difficult issues that I don't feel we're giving enough attention to. We're exchanging those for discussing President Zuma and Ramaphosa, etc. I just find those debates tired. I think we've got big issues on the horizon. We've got issues about what we do as a society in a global platform that is fast-facing conflict.
Yeah.
What do we do? What do we do around AI? What does it mean for our labor force? What does it mean for our bilateral relations? What do we do around climate change? What do we do around security as a measure internationally? What do we do about so tax? There are some global issues that we've got to respond to. What does education mean? Why? I've got little kids. My daughter has just finished exams now.
Yeah. Congrats to her.
When I look at what she's studying, she asked me the other day in the car, hey, I didn't remember this in the exam. I said to her, I can't even recall any time I've used that in my life. So there's an intrinsic value of education, but the extrinsic one has been ignored.
Yeah.
Why are we being complicit in building rubbish infrastructure in townships? I feel like we're complicit with oppression when we do that for our people. So I must concede, I find some discussions profoundly boring. I mean, if you and I today are still animated about discussing Mkhwebane, the former public protector, we are animated by that. It means we are not animated by the failures of the Executive Ethics Act as it's happening today when people are cruising around in blue lights and doing all sorts of things.
Living their best lives.
Living their best lives. For every debate that we have, I guess we should ask ourselves the question, what is this debate sometimes designed to distract us from? And I feel South Africa, we refuse to learn. In the early 2000s, people were warned to say, you are going to run out of power. Sure. And then we ignored it. And then President Mbeki had to announce in 2008, hey guys, you're going to have load shedding. And then we went through load shedding. Now today, load shedding has taught us a few things. Eskom is poorly funded. You've got municipal debt rising. You've got consumers who can't pay. Now we are asking our grandmothers to line up all day to register meters. All of those things, we're doing that. I'm telling you, the same warning clouds are looming around water.
Oh no.
Where people are, hey guys, it's not that you're going to run out of water, but your water infrastructure is so decaying that either you'll have contaminated water or water boards are going to collapse, etc. But no, guys, chilla. We hear this thing. I'm telling you, the movie is going to be the same. We're going to have water shedding, water restrictions.
Oh no.
And then after that, we'll start to talk about contaminated water. And then we'll have a conversation about how do we register meters, and then how do we help municipalities who can't pay water boards. In Mfuleni, in the Mohale water board. If those municipalities around it fail to pay their debt in full in the next 9 months, that water board will collapse. But I feel as a country, we don't want to talk about that. Right? Let's talk about Miss South Africa and whether legitimately she's here or not, whatever the debate is. So I think let's be careful. We are really needing a leadership that will roll up its sleeves now and say, guys, we've got big issues. Let's not be distracted. I even sometimes think some of our conversation are even around corruption is distracting. That's why I enjoy not being at SCOPA, but rather being at SCOWA, appropriations, because I'm kind of going, the corruption bits I can hear, but let's talk about performance. Let's ask ourselves the question, if 100 kids start school and only 60 get to matric, where are the 40? Let's then talk about that. When we allocate money to healthcare and discover that so much of it is left to medical legal claims, but some hospitals are not working, let's have that conversation. When 80 people are being murdered every single day in this country, that is a crisis.
Yeah.
So let's swim in those waters, because when it's said and done, that's what's going to keep even the GNU alive. Let's do that work. And I'm not sure we're talking enough about it.
Well, Mmusi Maimane, I know you're a busy man and you have a meeting to get to.
You and I could talk all day.
Oh,
Maybe
we
we
could.
should just do they've got a podcast-a-thon.
We should do that, yeah.
We should just have different people coming
yeah.
in. You do your hour, we'll do an hour, and then people can watch it all day. It'll be
Yeah,
good fun.
absolutely.
But as I say, I just love coming on here, because I think
we love having you.
let's have some really material conversations.
Absolutely. And I hope we'll be able to have you in 2025 as well. We'll keep having these conversations, seeing where things are going on the committee, whether we are grappling with some of these key issues, and also seeing if Liverpool's still top of the league. So
I'll never walk alone. I'll only walk with Sizwe. Always
so
great.
much, brother.
Thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. And we'd like to thank Black Brick for hosting us for this conversation in Cape Town. Make sure you check out Black Brick. They're all around South Africa. Aye.
Fam, you asked for some SMWX merch and we have delivered. I know you're always looking for ways to help support and grow this channel. So why don't you buy yourself an SMWX hoodie? Super comfy, super warm, and you can represent SMWX. You can check the link down below for how to buy your SMWX hoodie and help build and grow this channel so we can bring you more interviews, more analysis, and more educational insights.
Na na na.